Happy Purim, everyone. Happy Purim. I wish I could be with you in person, but this will have to do. And I hope everybody has a very simchadik Purim, a freilich Purim, which is about joy, unbridled joy. And hence the name of this class being the healthy, wild spirit. The healthy, wild spirit. Why healthy? Because there's a lot of ways to look at a wild spirit. I consider myself somewhat of a free spirit, and we all know when you're a free spirit, sometimes you can get yourself into deep trouble, and it can end up being very destructive because it doesn't have a place where it's unbridled and doesn't have a place where it's disciplined. So we have to be very careful in how to express that wild spirit. There are many people who have wild spirits as a result of growing up and being in an environment that is unhealthy. And when you're running for unhealthy things, you often develop a certain type of free-spiritedness, which could also be masking deeper fears. So it's not a simple matter when you speak about the wild spirit within each of us. Purim, of course, is a great time to talk about this because Purim is the day when we celebrate the free spirit. The free spirit. So that will be the theme of the discussion. And however you are out there, whether you see yourself as a conformist and your spirit seems trapped and locked, whether you feel bad about it or you feel good about it, or whether you feel yourself as a free spirit and it's unbridled and uncontrolled and gets you into trouble, or that you feel you're a healthy free spirit, whoever you are. And I just mentioned 4 different types of personalities, which, why not? In Purim, I'm sure there are many more. So we have 2 free spirits. One feels that it's good, one feels that it's trapped, and not trapped, I'm sorry. One feels it's a healthy wild spirit and it's good for him. Another one that feels that is destructive. And then you have 2 types of non-free spirits who feel either one that feels comfortable, that's better to be a conformist or to follow the guidelines and not get yourself into trouble, or you feel trapped because of whatever your life conditions are due to the pressures, responsibilities, expectations around you, so your spirit has gone into hiding. So whatever character you fit into, Purim is here for all of us. Now, let's be very frank and honest. When we're young children and we're born, we are all free spirits. A child begins to move around. Even before they begin to move around, their eyes are darting. They're alive, constantly moving. It is only the society, the social, the parental, and the environment that ultimately teaches children this is what's acceptable, this is what's not acceptable. Very often it can also be a type of almost killing of the spirit, or at least a taming of it. And often because of fear and because of wanting to be accepted or because of judgment or because parents were very critical, many of our spirits go into, as I said, hiding or go into some type of hibernation. Purim, let's go to Purim. Purim is the power of freeing yourself from all types of these confines. We say on Purim that it's a day where chayiv inish l'psuma. A person is obligated to actually get intoxicated, to the point they cannot distinguish between the cursing of Haman, and the blessing of Mordechai, which seems very strange. What kind of mitzvah is this to get intoxicated, especially to the point you can't distinguish between good and evil, between the blessing of the good and the curse of the evil? It sounds very reckless. Yet that is what it says. So let's discuss this, and let's take it into personal context, which is always the issue on Purim, is on any holiday, in any discussion, is to make it relevant to our lives. Okay. So let's go to the other extreme. What would we define as life and death? You can have someone who's physically alive, biologically alive, but they feel dead. The spirit is dead, enthusiasm is dead, confidence is dead. Walking zombie. I feel dead today. I feel deadened. Then you can have somebody who may seem weak and very limited, but their spirit, their eyes are sparkling. Their spirit is alive. They have something to live for. How do we define this distinction between these two? The answer is obvious. I'll use the word soul. You don't like the word soul, use another word, spirit. You can have a physical machine working, but its spirit is not there. If you play music or you sing a song, you can sing it to be yetzer, which means just to do it by rote. Or you can sing a song and there's a gusto, there's a robustness, there's a passion. It's alive. In life, we all would love to be able to be involved in activities that are not just doing it, but to be alive. Rab Levi Schneerson, the father of the Rebbe, once interpreted what we say in the tefillah. We say prayer Geshem and Tal. One we say in Shmini Atzeret, and one we say on Passover. And there's expression there, L'chaim v'lei l'movis. It's talking about the rain or the Tal, the dew, and we pray for it should be for life and not for death. So the obvious question is, it sounds redundant. If it's for life, L'chaim is definitely not l'movis. We say L'chaim. You don't have to add, and not for death, God forbid, or not for the opposite of life. And if you want to say in the negative, say Lo l'movis, not for death, you don't have to add L'chaim for life. And his answer is a brilliant and simple answer. That you can be alive and not be alive. Lo l'movis means that at least you should not be dead. You shouldn't be deadened. But that still doesn't mean you're alive. Alive means that there's a dimension, a passion, a warmth, a mobility, a constant, you can think of it like a churning engine, the pulsating energy that lies within everything is awake and alive. So the blessing is two ways. Number one, do not be deadened, but then also come to a place where you're not just not dead, not just the absence of death, but life has a voice and power of its own. Just like peace is not the absence of war, and love is not the absence of hate. Love has something far more than not just hating someone. If you lower your standards, God forbid, then you could say, you know what, at least I'm not hated. But love is much more than that, as is peace, as is shalom, as is chayim. Chayim. So Hebrew, the word chayim is used in many different places, especially mayim chayim, live waters. Yeah, live waters. A live wellspring, which has halachic implications in Jewish law, where certain impurities are only possible to purify with mayim chayim. As a matter of fact, we'll be reading about this also this coming week. Purim is Thursday, so Friday Shabbos. On Shabbos, in addition to the chapter by Yaakov Pekudei, which concludes the portion, the book of Exodus, and the last two chapters, we'll also be reading the Parsha Parah that talks about the red heifer, that when you mix its ash with mayim chayim, that has the power to purify from what? From death. So live water purifies from death. What this means spiritually and psychologically is that live waters means it's connected to its source. For example, a mikveh, a usual mikveh, is disconnected. You gather rainwater in 40 cubits in a certain basin, with certain rules, and it's considered a purifier. But there are things like death and others that you must have mayim chaim, a live wellspring. Like when you go to the mikveh of the Arizal in Tzfat, is a live wellspring. It means it's connected to a live mayan, to a spring that is constantly flowing waters. The Talmud, the Mishnah says, what defines something being alive? What happens if it dries up after a few years? So for 7 years, a spring is seen to be the witnesses that have seen it flowing, you assume that this is alive. If within 7 years you have not seen that, you assume, you wait and see that if it indeed dries up. So even in the beginning, even when it seemed that it was alive, because it didn't go through 7 years, which is really a full cycle of time, it's considered not alive. So in other words, live doesn't always mean what you see right now. Is that you see in it, you can't always see it, but you see in retrospect the perpetual power of something that is alive. Now we see another thing with life. Life has the thing called chayim and chay lahachis. You can be alive, but you can't give life to another. For example, there are teachers. There are people who are great students. They study well, but they can't teach well, or they can teach, but it's not excellent. Then there are those that not just mastered the wisdom, not just mastered the text and the ideas, but they actually mastered to the point they can create other masters. That's chay lahachis. That would be an energy that can energize others. Think of it like a flame that can ignite another flame ad infinitum. That is even a deeper level of life, because it's not just it's alive, but anything that comes in its proximity, anything that comes near it, also becomes alive. You know those people that have that type of contagious love for life. They just have that zest. They have that energy. When you're around them, you feel more alive. So that's in another dimension. So now all this testifies to the fact that a human being, by nature, when we say we're alive, it's not just biological life, what we call in Kabbalah nefesh, but there's also ruach, the spirit, which is emotional life. And there's neshama, intellectual life. And then there's chaya and yechida, the other two of the five names or dimensions of the soul that refer to transcendent and ultimately unified life. So you can have a life no purpose, a life that's aimless, a life, as I mentioned before, you walk around, you feel dead, a life that doesn't have that entire inner sense of purpose. And then you can have a life that is that way. Now, the birthright of each of us is we have the right and we have the ability to be fully alive all the time. It's life's travails and tribulations, trials and tribulations, the ups and downs, the grind of life, the routines, the pressures, the hostility, the tensions, the fears, the dysfunctionalities that have shaped and misshaped us and distorted us is what constrains. So think of you taking energy and you bottle it up and you lock it up. What happens? What happens is it stops singing. It stops breathing. It remains locked in there and it never dies. But for all practical purposes, it's trapped in a prison. This is exactly how the mystics explain the soul's descent into this earth, into this world, where a soul, a vibrant spiritual energy with a divine mission, with its own unique songs and music and voice, goes into a body in a material world, and when it becomes overwhelmed and overcome by it, and materialism takes over, that soul can be deadened or beat into subservience, beat into servitude, where it's like in prison. So think of a real free spirit who's in prison. A spirit that is so energetic, but now can't go anywhere because it's constricted. That prison, my friends, is our bodies. That prison is this material world. And it's important to know that, because by knowing that it's a prison, and knowing that the distress that the soul experiences in this prison, that's the way we free ourselves. So the first thing we have to remember is we are not made of this world. Never convince yourself that you are just another piece of a cog in the wheel of a machine called material life, and you're just rolling along and have once in a while a transcendent awakening. You're fundamentally a live wire, live energy. So free spirit is not the domain of just free spirits or Bohemians that are wired that way. Everybody has that. The question is how, to what extent, and what we've done with it. And there's no question that some may have a more pronounced form of it, but everyone has. That's what a neshama is. That's what a soul is. And until society, parents, education, peer pressure, and everything around us doesn't begin to so-called pressure us into shaping up in a certain way, that spirit is alive and kicking. This is the beauty of childhood. The beauty of an unbridled, unfettered childhood where you're able to really experiment and do whatever you wish. Now, obviously, we understand that given left its own resources, left to its own accord, people may tend to gravitate towards selfishness and other behavior, and therefore even that free spirit can end up stepping on others, hurting others, and so on. So, but that's called harnessing energy. That's not called destroying energy. Comes Purim, a weekday. It's a weekday. It's a holiday that's a work day, meaning you don't have to go to work, and many people don't go to work, but you're capable of going to work. A regular, ordinary day, and teaches us the extraordinary. Take a day and get out of your limitations. The chai vinish l'psume, which means to intoxicate, yes, it could be through wine, through vodka, and so on, but that's not that's just a means. Today, as a matter of fact, as the Rebbe says, that's not necessarily the way. The way is to appreciate. That's just a tool that God gave us, that wine. It has the quality and the virtue and the ingredients that bring joy into our life. Wine goes in, the secret comes out. But that's only a side effect. That's only a symptom. Why is wine that way? Because there is a sod, the secret inside each of us. That secret is your unbridled and unfettered energy. And throughout the year, it should be kept at bay. One day, release it. And the point is not to not distinguish between the curse and the blessing, God forbid. It's to distinguish between the structure of the curse and the blessing. That through life, here, this structure, that structure, you come to a point, to the point of the divine, where it's one emes, one truth. The same God that doesn't want bad, evil, wants good. The same the God that wants good doesn't want evil. So it's a unity. It's not the curse that you're looking for. It's recognizing you get to a place that transcends distinctions, that transcends structures, that transcends our institutions. And it means really you're accessing that deepest part of your joy, adalayada, the super-rational joy and exuberance, the ecstasy within the soul. Now, many people say, oh, how do I get there when I'm so trapped? Remember, your trappings are superimposed. Your joy is not. So Purim is the celebration of the free spirit, the wild free spirit within each of us, the healthy one, in a healthy way, and to channel it in a healthy way, which we shall soon discuss more at length. So that's what Purim is about. That's why Purim is a name. Purim comes from the name, strangely, that Haman gave through lots. Goral in Persian, in ancient Persian, is Pur. Pur hu ha-goral, the Megillah says. So what happens is, so the holiday was named after Pur because that's when he threw the lots. But the lots was a negative thing. It was throwing lots went to destroy the Jews. Why would that be given the name? And in general, what kind of name is that? Lots. Like calling a holiday the lottery. However, Goral is a sign of something that is beyond the rational. We also find Goral and lottery by Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, as the Tikkun Zohar says, the mystics say, Kippurim. Yom Kippurim, it's like Purim. Because Yom Kippur is also the day when we have 5 prayers, it touches the Yechida, that oneness, where you're absolutely connected to your divine purpose and your divine source. And Purim is also a Yom Echad, a one singular day. The thing is, Purim has a quality because we can achieve it through meals, through gifts. Because it's not a day when we fast, it's not a day when we abstain. We're involved in the material world. And that's when we experience this utter Yechida experience of unbridled and unfettered joy and simcha, which also explains Purim's quality over Simchas Torah, which is also considered, we talked many times about the unfettered, the unlimited joy, but Simchas Torah is still a holiday. And it's an extension of Sukkot, it follows Sukkot. And it's the celebration of the receiving of the second tablets on Yom Kippur. So Simchas Torah has the revelation of the joy of Yom Kippur. But Purim is in the material world, an involvement, where we eat Shuda, Mishta, we have a meal and a party. We give out food gifts. We give charity to the poor, monotonous lavyenim, shleich monas, ish l're'eu. And Purim is a activity, we're involved in this world, and there to experience this type of transcendence, that's an achievement. So, on a practical level, sometimes you just have to not look at yourself, get out of your zone, just ignore your negative voices, and just go dance. Just go celebrate. Recognize that you have a birthright, which is called your free spirit, your connection to the free spirit. Now let's talk about healthy free spirits and unhealthy free spirits. As I mentioned, everybody's spirit is free, and everybody's spirit is healthy. How does it become unhealthy? Unhealthy becomes when it is either driven by and fueled by forces that are not necessarily healthy forces. 1, and 2, the way it expresses itself is in ways that are destructive and narcissistic. You know, I've always bring up the Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplins and Jim Morrisons of the late 60s, all in their 20s, ODing, each in their own way, and then many others who may not have been killed and died, but nevertheless also OD'd. These were free spirits, there's no question about it. You see it from their music, you see it from their lyrics, you see it from their behavior. But when you look at it, you also see a certain sadness. They had nowhere to go with it. There was no channeling of it, there was no harnessing it, there was no directing it into anything productive. What I mean by productive, yes, productive in the music they created, but they could not live, and that's where they're gone. They didn't build families, children. They couldn't come back and tell about it. They couldn't come and return to this earth in a grounded way and integrate that free-spiritedness. So the question is, what was healthy about it, what was unhealthy? So I've discussed many times the concept that the Alter Rebbe, the Baal HaTanya in Likutei Torah, speaks about in Chukas, which is Parsha Parah. He talks about the Sreifas HaParah, where you bring the offering of the Parah Adum, the red heifer, and the ashes you mix with the water, the live water that I mentioned before. So the live water we've talked about, being alive and being connected to a source. I'll elaborate a little more soon because the connecting to the source is a critical component. But what about the Efer HaParah, which is the ash that remains, the Efer? So he says there's something fascinating, which is a tremendous lesson in recovery, in healing, and even of the worst type of addictions and and vices. And what he says there, the following. Excuse me. he says that when you burn the parah, the cow, the heifer, in an offering, what remains is ash. As in any type of fire, where anything you burn doesn't disappear completely. What remains are ashes. What does that tell us? That you've broken down the elements of that particular entity into its basic elements, and what's left is afer, which is the ash. In this case, you mix the ash with the live waters, mayim chaim, nasa mayim chaim el keli, it's a container, and you're able to create magic which is essentially purified from the death of life. And we'll soon discuss that as well, what that means. The death of life, of course, means the numbness, the paralysis, where a free spirit is trapped in whatever life we are right now. If you are out there and you're feeling depressed, and you're feeling down, your life is a mess, your life you think is a failure, all this is a form of experiencing death. And we're going to talk now about the healing of death and how Purim does that for us. So we talked about the live waters. Now, the afer, what does he say? He says the afer refers to the behemoth, the parah, the cow, the animal, is essentially symbolic of all our desires, for good or for bad. So the blood of the cow, the blood of the animal is like the passion, and the chelev is like the pleasure, the passion and the pleasure and the lusts of life. Now, if that has been used in the wrong way, where our passions and our lusts and our desires and our passion and pleasures have been used in the wrong way, what you need to do is put it through a fire. Fire is a cleanser. Fire is a burner. And it breaks down the elements, but it's not to destroy the power of pleasure or the power of passion. It's to rechannel it. That's what he says. He says every desire, even the worst possible lust, a lust is something that's very destructive, very sinful, very prohibited. You have to distinguish between the object of the desire, the taiva itself, and the koyach hamesava, as he put, the power to desire. Now, the power to desire, before it manifests in any particular form of expression, as he says, is yisedose b'harei kodesh. It's rooted in very great high places. The greatest people have passion, but their passion is directed in the right place. So the passion is not the problem. That's where many people make a mistake. They see someone's very passionate about something really destructive, so they think it's the passion. If we could create a lobotomy, let's get rid of the spirit. No. You want to destroy and eliminate and burn out the tziyur, the shape and form, the expression of the passion, the place it's being released, the objective of the desire, not the desire itself. That's the burning of the cow. What you're doing is taking it away and leaving the main element, which only remains is just the power of desire. And then directing that with a mayim chayim, that revives life. So let's translate that into psychological terms. Very often when we've been hurt in life and we don't feel safe and secure, we begin to wander. Some of us turn into free spirits. Some of us begin to, because we didn't have a comfortable childhood or a comfortable home, so we've learned to master the art of being nomads, traveling, a certain sense of adventure. You're really on the run. You're running from a burning building. But the free spirit can come into play. Now, let's say any type of addiction a person falls into, anything that you get addicted to. Well, no one wants to get addicted. Why? Because they're looking for some relief. You're looking for some relief, you're looking for some high, some expression, some sense of objective. You'll see, talk to drug addicts, alcoholics, and others, you see that they say we're driven because there was something that was giving us that relieved us. Till you become a slave to it, of course. So it's not driven by just someone decides, one day I want to become an alcoholic. One day I want to be dependent on drugs. One day I want to be a porn addict or a gambling addict. Nobody sets out on that journey. You're looking for something. Your soul is looking for expression. And if it's not finding it, there's some relief in a healthy way, it'll find it wherever it goes. And the hungrier the soul, the more passion there'll be. Someone traveling in the desert hasn't drank water for a long time. When liquid comes their way, they'll drink it with much more passion than anyone will drink it, with this type of almost ravenous approach. Now, what happens if it's not water? They could end up killing themselves. So the passion is coming from a healthy place. It's the need for the soul to quench its thirst, the mind to quench its curiosity, the heart to quench its craving, its need for something. The question now is what is going to quench it? So he distinguishes by burning the chelev and the dam, which is the fat and the blood, which is the pleasure and the passion. Getting it down to its raw element called afer, dust. Now you have its pure form. You've gotten rid of its manifestation, which is, look, they say, hitting rock bottom. Its manifestation in alcohol and drugs and other forms of addictions or phobias or fears. Because really this applies to anything. Breaking that down, now what you're left with is the original power to desire, separated from the object of the desire, which is an unhealthy one, which you've now destroyed. Now you're supposed to take, and that's the key, finding an alternative. How do we take that passion, that pleasure, power of passion and power of pleasure, I should say, and channel into something positive? I remember meeting a group, I forgot what their name was, but it was a group of kids in rehab, teens at risk, and their group leader did something fascinating. He established a film production company, which was something about changing the world. I'm trying to remember what it was. A better world. No, I don't remember. Productions. And these kids, teenagers, late teens, who were once big troublemakers, people in the street and getting into all kinds of trouble, homeless, some of them, and so on, turned a film. Some of them tell their own story. They turned their energy and their life story, even the negative, into a passionate, productive direction. So instead of just saying, you know what, okay, we won't be on drugs anymore, we won't be on alcohol anymore, or the other addictions, we won't do anything. No. Nature abhors a vacuum, the human spirit abhors boredom and vacuum. You have to find and channel that dust. Now that it's back to dust, which you've gotten rid of the negative manifestations, now you can channel it to something positive, an alternative. So suddenly that power of passion, that power of pleasure is now directed into something very positive. So there you go. Parah, this Parsha Parah that we read this Shabbos, is essentially captured in Purim, which is on this Thursday, in the week of Parsha Parah. What is the story? The story is the story of combining two elements. Being alive, which is the Mayim Chaim. You must have that if you're going to fight the numbness, the boredom, or worse, the destructive elements of our lives. You need to be connected to the source, not just standing water, but water connected to Mayim Chaim, to a source. And number two, you need to be able to then take that and mix it with the remains of the passion and the pleasure that are now no longer being directed in the wrong place, but they're still just ash. Mix the ash with live water, and then you take the ash and you put the liveness, I don't know if that's the right word, the energy, the passion, the power of passion and power of pleasure that remains from the dust, that remains from the object that was once destructive, was destructive, and now you've eliminated it. That is mixed with Mayim Chaim. Excuse me. With Mayim Chaim, and the Mayim Chaim now enlivens it and uses that dust, that power of passion, that koyach hamesava, to direct it into a positive passion, into a positive pleasure. That's the key. And that's the story of Purim. We eat and we drink, we're involved in the material world, but it's coming from a place of yechida, adalayada, a place that's beyond the structures. So therefore can go and take your passion and pleasure in an intoxicated way, in a way that transcends logic and rationale, and turn it into a force of positive revolution. That's what a healthy free spirit does. So how can you distinguish between a healthy and an unhealthy? Very simple. One is narcissistic and very about me. I need to express myself, or I need relief. The other is about changing the world, about engaging. One is the first is not methodical. It's about whatever comes your way. The second is methodical because the first is selfish. The latter is selfless. Selfless in the sense that it's not about it's humble. I imagine a wild free spirit that's humble as opposed to arrogant. And there are many other distinctions. They're all rooted in the fact that the wild free spirit that's not healthy is running for its life. It may expressing a very beautiful part of its spirit, but now it's trapped, as I said, in the cow, in passions and pleasures that need to be burned away. You have to get back to the core element. So when you see someone very rebellious, you see someone who's very destructive even, you have people in history who did such terrible destruction, but they had this power, this demonic power, maniacal power over people. So they had power, but it was completely hijacked, in obscene fashion, hijacked and distorted into being destructive in people's lives and destroying people's lives. So you can imagine where that can go. Whoever, the greater the person, the greater the Yetzer Hara, the greater their temptations, the greater their challenge, the greater destruction they can create. A creative doctor can create a lot more problems than an uncreative one. A creative artist, because creativity is energy. So, what is the goal there? The goal is to take that energy and first subdue it, that it shouldn't be feeding and fueling negative behavior. So step one is separating the two. That the fuel is fueling negative behavior, manipulative behavior. I found people, I was just talking to someone a few weeks ago who, thank God they got out of it, but they were in very big trouble. They were predators, sexual predators. Not children, thank God, but adults, very manipulative and very much able to convince anyone of anything and taking advantage of people. This person did a lot of damage. And now he's in a state where he has some type of, I'm not sure what happened, but it sounds like he hit rock bottom. Something must have happened. And he's in a very remorseful state and very broken, because it's not so easy to reverse what he's done. But he definitely has energy. I see it. Charisma. And the goal here is, number one, is you got to correct the past. You can't just ignore it and say, oh, you know what, I'll now become a good person. But then the second step is channeling that charisma into positive elements. So we all have that free wild spirit inside of us. The question is whether it's going to be a healthy one, whether it's directed toward healthy causes. And that's where Purim comes in. It teaches us, dance, sing, go out of your hagbolas, go out of your limitations. Simcha peretz geder. Joy breaks boundaries. Because when you're joyous, you can jump over things, you can ignore things, you transcend things. But that joy has to be saturated with humility, with the humility that allows it to be used for healthy purposes and not selfish ones, and definitely not manipulative ones. So, in the final analysis, when you look at the whole situation with your life, you have to discover which one are you. Are you a person where your free spirit is completely disappeared and you're satisfied, content? So then the truth is, Purim for a person like that, Purim has to remind you, no, you're not accomplishing your life's purpose. God sent you with the soul. You need passion. You can't just get away with just being mistapik b'muad, which means doing the least amount possible just to stay comfortable. So Purim there is a wake-up call to get you out of your limits and go dance, go do something, break out, and do something unique with your life. Get your voice alive again. Many people run there for shelter. It's comfortable. I'm not hurting anyone. No one hurts me. That's not why you were sent to this earth. You were sent to this earth to transform, to lead, to ignite, to bring life to others. For the second type of person that I mentioned earlier, who feels a free spirit, but it feels it's trapped because of life circumstances, because of job, because of expectations, relationships. So Purim is an opportunity for you to grab onto its rope, the Purim rope that can pull you into another place. And even if you may think it's only for the day, but Purim's power is throughout the year. The day is when we refuel, we revisit, we reconnect, we recharge our batteries. But the goal is to then take it right into the next stage, which is the days after Purim, of course, leading into Passover. So if Purim for that person is an opportunity to not give up hope and to say, you know what, that spirit that's been trapped, it's time for me to finally express it. So that's a different second message of Purim. Then there's the message of Purim to the third type of person, and that is the dysfunctional or the unhealthy wild spirit. The unhealthy wild spirit is doing all kinds of free-spirited things, to the detriment of others, detriment of him or herself. So Purim is a time to realign, to revisit where your free spirit is going, what direction is it going. Maybe you need to burn some things out of your life, and not to burn them, annihilate, but to remain with a pure original intent. It's a time to revisit to the point of departure. When did you begin using your energy? And how did it get hijacked? How did it wander away? And finally, for the fourth type of person, who is a healthy free spirit, Purim, of course, is a time to celebrate that, to express it, to bring it to new heights. So wherever you are, Purim has a message for you. And the message is that you have an unbelievable resource within you, a fire, a burning fire. Do you know that? Do you feel that? Do you feel that energy within you? And if you don't, it's quite sad because you have it. You're just not aware of it. You've given up on it. Your idealism has waned. People have thrown cold water. You've gotten disappointed. Purim is a time to remember nothing is impossible. Just like Yom Kippur is the birth of hope. Moses coming back with the tablets, second tablets. Salachti kidvarecha. That God said, I forgive them as you've asked me to. Purim is also a form of resolution, where after Matan Torah, when the Jews received the Torah, they received it from above. They still could have a complaint that we didn't accept it on our own. Purim is when we, at our own initiative, at our own volition, connect. So Purim is also a form of hope, of discovering hope, that no matter what situation we're in, always know you have a fire that's burning inside of you. And that fire, the world is waiting for that fire to express itself. You have unique skills, you have unique spirit. We need that sparkle. We need that passion. We cannot afford to have one person who feels deadened or not alive. We need the Mayim Chaim, but we need the Mayim Chaim to enliven your passions, your pleasures, and direct them in the right place. This is the Purim spirit. This is what Purim is all about. The Jews had Eira, Simcha, Sasan Yakar. All the different levels of experiencing light, joy, exaltation, dignity or honor. We say it every night, every Mitzvah Shabbos, Saturday night in Havdalah, and then we say, Kain Tialanu. And that's how it should be for us, as it was then. Hayom Ma'elin Iskarim Vanasim, as the Arizal, the Ramaz explains. It's not just events that happened then we're remembering now. It's happening now. That's why the Baal Shem Tov says, someone that reads the Megillah backwards, the Talmud says, Lo Yotza. It's not considered as if he read it. So the Baal Shem Tov has an interpretation, reading it backwards as if it happened back then. And the Rebbe one year in Tov Shalom Advov said that how do you reconcile it with the Talmud? Because if you read it as an event that happened back then, you're reading it backwards. Because the last event in the Megillah happened closest to us. You have to read it frontwards, which means you have to read it as if it's happening and unfolding right now. The Purim power. So though it's thousands of years ago, we relive it, we recreate it. Today we listened to Prime Minister Netanyahu speak at the Congress. Yesterday, AIPAC, President of the Czech Republic, I don't know if you heard his words where he said, Ani Yehudi, I am a Yehudi, I am a Jew. That we have to all say that today because this is the situation we're in where we see Jews being hurt. Everyone feels that way. But I was thinking about the word Yehudi. Yehudi means, as the Talmud says, the word that's used in the Megillah to describe Jews, Mordechai Yehudi, HaYehudim, Jews, is used for those that accept and acknowledge the divine, and they reject and repudiate anything that's idolatrous, anything man-made. That lies at the heart of real joy. Nothing in this man-made world can give you real joy because everything in this man-made world is created, has a beginning and has an end. Temporary things cannot give us permanent security. Connecting to the divine, as the Jews did then, as Mordechai did when he said he will not bow to Haman, despite the risks that it placed him and the Jewish people. They were almost destroyed as a result. But it was that same faith that also saved them, that we stand strong with the divine power within us. That's where the deep joy comes from, the joy that you know you're connected to your divine purpose. You were sent to this earth, as he says in Tanya chapter 33, celebrate and enjoy in pleasure, take pleasure, that you are an agent, an ambassador of God to come into this world and transform the world. This is a Purim Dika feeling. And Purim is in a way where we experience it in this completely unbridled fashion, outside of all limitations and all confinements. A blig vuldika way, in an infinite way, but it's experienced in a finite world. So seeing the voice of solidarity of the President of the Czech Republic standing up in that fashion, seeing Prime Minister Netanyahu citing Purim story, citing Moses, the image of Moses in the Congress. Very, very empowering to describe that the power ultimately is the power that we connect to the divine source, that gives us the ability to overcome any challenge. So, in the final analysis, every one of you is a free spirit, some of us more than others. Please join me in a revolution. Revolution. A revolution of good. A revolution means that you break through the norms, the routines, in a positive way. In a negative way, it means you destroy structures. You defy institutions. You don't follow orders. That could bring to destruction. In a positive revolution, what we're talking here, a super-rational, positive revolution, you're also transforming, but you're transforming institutions. You're revolutionizing society. You're elevating it to another place. One destroys and one transforms. One lifts it up to a completely new dimension. The other one makes it crumble and brings it down to dust. So we need to have both elements. The live waters, Mayim Chaim, plus the Efer, where we break down the structures so we can only have the pure passion and pure pleasure that remains after the Sreifa, after the fire. And after a fire, we become rich. That's what the Kadeshei aliens say, the holy ones say, the supernal holy ones say. So even when we go through sometimes a difficult time in life where something seems to be broken down, think of it not as breaking you, it's breaking the tzura, the shape and form, the manifestation of something you've been doing. And the only way to free yourself from it is to break it down. But it's not breaking you. It's a break in what you've been doing, in your habits. It's giving you an opportunity to break your habit, free yourself from the habit, so then you can derive, you can extract from that habit the pure kernel of the koyach hamasava, the power to desire, the power of passion. And mix that with the live water, with that feeling alive, with that direction that's coming from living waters, and direction that gives life, and not just as alive, but also gives life to others, meaning sharing it with others, celebrating with others. Then we have the ability to actually transform in a type of ripple effect, where it's not just yourself; it begins to be an effect that affects others, and others affect others. Which Purim also is the celebration of our unity as a people, as a nation. That's why we send gifts to each other, food gifts, and we give monotonous lavyonim, charity. And in general, all of the lessons of Purim, like he says in Monos Levi, from the Ramah Ishalish, he writes how everything Purim is related to unity. Haman actually said it. He said, Yeshna Am Echad, when he was inciting Achashverosh, the king, the Persian king, against the Jews. Here is one singular nation, who's one nation, Am Echad, Yeshne, Yam Echad, Mafuzim, Mafered Ben Am, spread out, dispersed among all the nations, v'daseim, and their faith and their religion is different than everybody's. So he said, Am Echad. He gave us, he revealed, the enemy revealed our power. We are one. Despite our diversity, there's one underlying force. Ani Yehudi is recognizing that one underlying force of the divine, rejecting the fragmentation of a material and hedonistic and consumption-oriented universe, as the president of the Czech Republic pointed out, and connecting to that form of unity through unity with each other. That creates that synergy. So it's not just an individualistic experience, a particular one to you, to me. We do it together. We sit at a meal together. We share. We send gifts to each other. We remind ourselves that when you transcend the structure, we're really all one. And yet we bring it back into the structure of existence, and we bring back that sense of unity, and each of us in our own way has that voice, has that eternal voice, that Purim Dika voice, the joy voice, the voice of the soul, that recognizing why it's here, the purpose why we're here, and the power that we have to overcome any challenge. Everyone should have a very Freilich and Purim, and I look forward to continuing celebrating with you and sharing classes and other programs we do at the Meaningful Life Center. Please go to www.meaningfullife.com. Did I say www.meaningfullife.com for all our offerings? It's been a pleasure and an honor. And again, a very Freilich and Purim and a Freilich and Tamid should always be celebrating in good ways, and use that wild spirit, that healthy wild spirit, to transform the world. Fearless, courageous, unwavering, forging ahead, and taking all that energy, harnessing it with humility into transforming our world into a home for the divine, where we will all celebrate joy all the time, where we'll finally eliminate all the negative forces that are so much of a product of the Hamans and of the hedonism and of the selfishness and self-interest society in which we live. Happy Purim, and everyone should be blessed in every possible way. Thank you very much.